Namaskar. Friends, in this discourse number 80, the speaker will enlighten you what is Yajna. The most misunderstood term in the contemporary world. Yajna is yoga, and yoga is yajna. What is yajna? One meaning of yajna is sacrifice. This is the usual English translation. And this sacrifice in turn has derived from another English word, sacred. So, Yajna is sacred. It is not merely sacrifice, but that sacrifice is sacred, holy. It is highly sanctified action. Sacrifice is in two forms. The one sacrifice is outer. In those days, Vedic times, in this land, the great sages and kings used to conduct yajnas, and in that yajnas, the sages and the kings used to offer the things or objects, some ingredients in the fire. And at the end of this yajna, the sages and the kings used to distribute wealth to the poor. And in those days, one's wealth was measured in terms of the number of cows that one possessed. So the cows, healthy cows, were distributed to the poor. By this way of action, the yajna was completed. So only when the yajna was accompanied by this kind of charitable action, it was called yajna. And this yajna was Vedic yajna. And this kind of offering This is outer offering. What we have just now learnt is outer offering. That is pouring ghee, the ingredients, sacred ingredients, in the fire, and then at the end distributing cows to the poor, constitute outer sacrifice. These are bahya sacrifice. This is outer sacrifice. But there is another form of sacrifice associated with the yajna, and that is inner sacrifice. And this inner sacrifice takes in the form of prayer, uttering mantra, meditation, doing meditation. And pranayama. And these yogic actions performed inwardly in the form of prayer, doing pranayama, meditation, uttering mantra, constitute sacrifice which is considered very sacred. This is one of the greatest sacrifices of yajna. And this greatest sacrifice is sacrificing oneself. And this self, this inward self, this ego, the accumulated karmic impulses, the samskaras, the vasanas, they have to be destroyed, they have to be offered, and they have to be offered in the form of uttering mantra, prayer, and doing pranayama and meditation. And this is called inner sacrifice. So we have learned two forms of sacrifice, the outer sacrifice and the inner sacrifice. Unfortunately, we mistake the yajna, the sacrifice, in the sense of outer sacrifice, in the form of offerings. It is true, this is one form of yajna, but this is not the ultimate. By simply giving some offerings in the form of charitable action does not constitute yajna in the truest sense, in the truest Vedic sense. Such outer offering must be accompanied by the inner offering. What can be offered from the inside of our body? Our ego, our karmic impulses, our samskaras, our vasanas, and so on. These constitute the self within quote, and this has to be offered in the fire. The fire is a significant element in the yajna. It has the property of burning. It burns and also transforms. What is to be burnt in the fire of this yajna? The petty self, all the accumulated karmic impulses in the form of samskaras have to be offered in the fire, and they have to be burnt. And this is a symbolic gesture. And this is the symbolic significance of conducting the yajna. So the fire symbolically burns all your ego, petty ego. And at the same time, it has the property of transforming you. When all that petty self is offered in the fire, you are completely rejuvenated. You are completely transformed into a new human being. This is the ultimate purpose of conducting yajna. And when you are totally transformed, then you are Dvija, twice born. You emerge out of that a new human being. And this is the Guna of Fire. So fire not only burns but transforms. But if you want to undergo that deep, drastic transformation within you, you have to sacrifice what is within you. And that is called yajna. This is the greatest meaning of yajna, and this is how the word yajna has to be understood. Not in the form of simply offerings. That is bahya, and this is antar, internal. Only this internal takes place, this antar sacrifice takes place, this internal sacrifice takes place. Yajna has no meaning. And this is called yoga. And that is how, in the beginning of this discourse, the speaker said, Yajna is yoga, and yoga is yajna. I hope the listeners have understood the intricacy of this term, yajna, and the hidden meaning of this Sanskrit term, yajna, and the ultimate purpose of conducting yajna. And you need not conduct yajna in the external sense by offering the things and objects in the fire. You need not dig a pit. You need not bring firewood, sacred firewood. You need not buy ghee, tons of ghee or tins of ghee, and pour in that fire. And add all ingredients, sacred ingredients. You need not do all that. That is external action. In fact, when we perform all that in public, that becomes a show. And that is not called yajna. But the ultimate yajna is when you sacrifice the inner, the self, the ego that you have accumulated over the years. Symbolically, you can do that right now. When you do that right now, that is offering your petty self, burning all that is accumulated within you. Then you are, in the truest sense, performing yajna. When that is done, it is called yoga. Also, the word yajna has another meaning, the divine, deva. This yajna is divine. This yajna is Vishnu. This yajna is Brahma, Prajapati. This yajna is Shiva, Rudra, the destroyer. So this yajna must destroy, eliminate all that is accumulated in your body and mind. When this is performed in the real sense, then you are indeed doing yajna. Not in the ritualistic sense. And this is the actual meaning that was associated with the word yajna in those days, but unfortunately it became corrupt. It was given various misinterpretations. So in this discourse, the speaker has clarified what yajna is. It has two forms, it has two kinds. One is the bahya, the other was is antar, that is external and internal. But in those Vedic days, both were combined. Both forms of sacrifice were combined. But in the contemporary situation, we cannot conduct that Bahya Yoga. We cannot invite sages. We cannot invite yogis. We cannot dig pit. We cannot bring sacred firewood. We cannot bring tins of ghee and pour. We cannot add the ingredients. But we can follow the second form of yajna, that is the sacrifice of the internal. This is the greatest sacrifice. This is called the greatest yajna. When such a sacrifice, your self, your petty self, that comprises samskaras, vasanas, karmic impulses, is destroyed, is eliminated. You are indeed doing yajna. When this is done, it is called yoga. So yajna is yoga, yoga is yajna. we shall meet in the next discourse and examine the other shades of the meaning of this most beautiful word, Yajna. Namaskar.